Hi, I'm Rex Brandstatter, the Coralville Historian. Today we've got another fun episode of Coreville of Days Gone By. This one is entitled The Great Lack of Understanding. This story you're about to hear is 100% absolutely true, tucked away in the annals of the history of the city of Coralville, the town of Coralville and its people. I'm not sure many people know about this. It's been a story that's been talked about for many years. Only part of the story's been talked about. Today we've got all of the facts. This ending is very surprising, and I'm sure you're going to want to stay here with me. Here we go. The lack of understanding actually ended up in a heated argument and a confrontation between the parties. This all started in 1871. In 1871, a group of local people went and they got themselves officially certified by the state of Iowa to be a church. And they became known as the Coreville Ecclesiastic Union Society. And they operated as a church in the apple orchard, if you will, of Mr. Clark, Zeke Clark's yard in Coreville. And that started in 1871. Now, Ezekiel Clark, who was considered to be the founder of the town of Coralville, lived high on the hill above the Coralville Dam. Now, if you know where the Burger King is today in Scottsdale Apartments, in Scottsdale Apartments, the west side of Scottsdale Apartments, the far west will say, as all the units over there, that's where the church was. And that's where the Coralville Union Ecclesiastic Church operated with several members of the town of Coralville as members until 1890, 1891. And that's where we pick up the story. So it went for decades. The old building in the apple orchard was the home of the Coralville Ecclesiastic Church and all of its events and church-related activities. Other churches and religious people never used that church, although it was set up so that they could, but nobody ever did. The members of the society of the church in 1891 decided it was time to build a new church. And so they set out to do that. Now the church, as also many of them we know, had little if any money. So they approached the town of Coralville. The society did get the deed to 2 lots on which to build the new church, and they formed a coalition with the town of Coralville and the people of Coralville, and the new building was built. Everything went smoothly, or did it? You see, the arrangement was that the basement be used for anything except dancing. Dancing, the modern form of dancing, was way too much back in those days in 1922, and for moral purposes only, they said the use was to be. And Mr. Robinson, at his discretion, made that and put that into his legal papers. Now, Mr. Robinson was a fine, upstanding Coralville businessman who operated the oat meal mill. Now that's on the river south of the dam, south of what we all know as the Coralville Power Dam. It was south about 100 yards, and it was the oat mill. And that's what Mr. Robinson did. He was very successful. He raised a family here in Coralville. And when it came time for his church to want to build a building, he gave them 2 lots. Now the 2 lots obviously are still there because land hasn't left. It is now part of Riverview Square Mall in Coralville. In the 100 block of 2nd Avenue down there. So if you would go down to Riverview Square Mall and we'll say behind Golfzilla and then down that street a little bit, the building still sits there today. That's not its original location. It was actually moved across the street, so it was to the east there, but that's the building we're talking about. And when they moved it, they took the basement out, so it's kind of shrunk down a little bit, but that's the building. It's still there today. And we can go into the official metrics of the building at a time later, but that's what we're talking about right now. That's the building we're up to. So things were going fine until 1892, until we all got together to build a building. It seems that everything is so good, in fact, that the people of the Coreville were so enthralled with this building of the building that they went to the town council and they asked the town council to give the church some money. Now let's think that through, that the church and the town went together to build a building. I'm not sure that would happen today, in the way we interpret things, but that's exactly what happened. And then after many years, things went well until 1921. And now the uses, the Coreville had used this thing. The West Lucas Board of Trustees in our township had used this for city council meetings, for trustees meetings. It had been used for activities that the town sponsored for youth, which could have included dancing, by the way. Okay. It was used for meeting hall. It was used for organization use it, because after all, the town of Coralville had a fine oral agreement with the church since 1892, and the townspeople had put in, if you will, blood, sweat, and tears and money into this property. And everything was going fine until 1921. 1921, the town of Coralville filed a lawsuit against the church and its directors. The town of Coralville filed a lawsuit. What was up? Why would the town file a lawsuit? Well, it seems in the meantime, Mr. Robinson he'd been gone now for about 10 years at this time, and the heirs of Mr. Robinson had read the will many times and the directives for the use of the church. They were not happy about some of the activities that were going on over there. It was way getting out of hand for some of the groups and other people who were meeting there. So they tried to interfere. They went to a couple meetings and stood up, and they told people around town that they were going to lock the doors and close the doors, and that Coreville couldn't use it for that, and so on and so on. And boy, it was starting to broil over. So at one point, the town, several members of the church put a lock on the door, and they said the town couldn't use it. And that's when the town of Coreville said, we can take no more, and they filed a lawsuit. As a matter of fact, we're going to hear from the attorneys. You're going to hear from the attorneys on that here this evening. Attorney T.M. Fairchild was one of two attorneys for the town of Coreville, and he laid out the lawsuit as filed by the town against the board of directors of the church. Matter of fact, it was he represented the town of Coreville and the people of Coreville at the same time. And it was heard in Johnson County Court, at the Johnson County Courthouse in Iowa City by Judge R.G. Popham. And 10 months later, there was a response that was from Attorney Henry G. Walker, attorney for the defendant, the Coreville Ecclesiastic Church. So this was the real deal. This was the town of Coreville versus the Coreville Ecclesiastic Union Church over what we all know in this day and age as Old Town Hall, and over the rights for the use of the basement, the lower level, based on an oral agreement that was in effect starting in 1892 to 1921. It was still in effect at the time of the lawsuit. So the arguments later on had been made, and both sides felt more and more comfortable that they had made the proper argument. Both sides were adamant that they had the best case. The talk around town was that the town of Coreville and the people had helped rebuild the church, and they had donated labor and money, and the town actually invested lots and lots of time and effort into this entire rebuilding and maintenancing of the church. They put the new standing steel roof on there, the same roof that's on it today. They poured a new floor in the basement, a concrete floor in the basement, and they upgraded it. They spent a lot of time and effort down there. So clearly, the town of Coralville and the people had the right to use the basement as they saw fit. The townspeople were certain that they would win. Mayor Ed Kozier was sure that since the townspeople had physically helped repair the building and public funds had been used, the court would see it Coreville's way. It was the talk of the town and in the legal community as well. Would the oral agreement stand up? Would the use as agreed be proper so as not to have the basement and the building, the use of the basement is all we're talking about here now, the use of the basement, so as not to have that use and the basement revert back to the church as per Mr. Robinson's directives? Would this stand up in court? Would the town win, or would the church win? Would the church's argument that the will and the written documents and the agreement under which Mr. Robinson let the town of Coralville and the West Lucas trustees use that for different activities, would that be found in jeopardy, in violation for all the uses? The church prayed. The church members prayed on many occasions that this would revert back. Now, the problem with a lot of this, as you might suspect, in 1922, the population of Coralville would have been about 400 people. So many of the people, members of the church, were also on the town council. One of them at one time had been the town treasurer. So this was kind of tough. This was all like brother versus brother, family versus family type of thing. And clearly, if one side won, we're not sure the other side was going to put up with it. So it went, and so it went. The court case took a couple days in Johnson County Court. And when the verdict was read, it became quite apparent that there was going to be a rift in the town of Coralville based on that outcome. This court will now be in session. Petition of the quiet title filed November 7th, 1921, in and for Johnson County, Iowa. Mr. Walker, would you make your opening comments, please? Your Honor, I am Henry G. Walker, the attorney for the defendant, the Coreville Ecclesiastic Union Church, Coralville, Iowa, and I am here today to present our case. I represent the defendant and the members of the church and their society formed under the Iowa law of the 1885. We are an official church under those laws, and we have acted therefore ever since. And we are here today to talk to you on this case and our response to my brethren, the fine attorney, Mr. Fairchild, for the town of Coreville and the plaintiffs. Hereby file in front of the court, Your Honor, hereby file in this District Court of Iowa in Fort Johnson County on this day, September 21, 1922, the response of my clients, the Coreville Union Ecclesiastic Church. Mr. Fairchild, please come forward, state your case, sir. You are the plaintiff. Go ahead and enter your case with the court. The court is ready to go. Your Honor, I am Attorney T.M. Fairchild. I am here today as the duly appointed attorney for the plaintiff, the town of Coralville. We are here today to discuss my clients in our case that we brought before the Johnson County Court against the Coreville Union Church, a corporation, and certain members of the church. We are here today to show to you and show to the court that my client, the town of Coralville, is the duly proper owner and can fair well use the basement of what the town hall, the church building, we can use it under a verbal agreement with the church that came to us. As you know, as the court knows, the court will soon find out that my client, the town of Coralville, has fair use of that property, better known as the church and old town hall. I'm here today to prove that. And if it pleases the court, anything you cannot hear, understand, I would ask Judge Popham, I would ask you please to interrupt me and ask me to repeat. It's a pleasure to be here today on behalf of my client. I want to hear from both sides. I don't want anyone else speaking while the counselors are at the podium. Come forward. Number one, my client, the defendants, deny. We deny each and every allegation in said petition and amendments thereto, not expressly admitted in the answer. We deny everything that the town of Coralville, with their fine attorney, Mr. Fairchild, have brought before the court. We absolutely not. Let this be clear. We deny those allegations, and we're here to prove them today. The defendants, now we do admit there's a couple of verbiage changes in there. We can certainly live. My clients and the fine people of the Coreville Union Church, we are happy to allow Mr. Fairchild and the town of Coreville those small and minor changes. But Your Honor, that does not change our ability to deny each and every point. The defendants allege that the Coreville Union Church has held open and notorious and adverse and exclusive possession of the premises in the plaintiff's petition, and that any claim of the plaintiffs has been barred by law and the statute of limitations against actions on unwritten contracts and actions for recovery of real property. This was a verbal agreement. So they say. This was an oral agreement. Well, we're in court. Bring us something in writing. We know, Your Honor, we know that the fine people of Coralville invested the town's money, and the people of Coralville came forward and helped rebuild and maintainize this building, Your Honor. But it was at their own free will that they did that. There were no guarantees. Why, do we have anything in writing? No, we don't. That's why we're here today. The defendants we state that such use of the premises described has been made by the plaintiffs has been with permission of the defendants, with the understanding that such use was nothing more than a license to the township trustees of West Lucas and to the town council of Coralville to use the basement for such moral, public purposes that did not interfere with the use of the church. For religious purposes and anything that was adverse to that, we would not approve. Yes, that's good. Excellent point. Excellent point. The long gone and late Mr. Robinson would not have approved of some of the uses that have been going on down there in the basement of Town Hall, in the basement of the Coreville Ecclesiastic Union Church. I'm sorry, Your Honor, but that wasn't the oral agreement. If this court hereby decides that the oral agreement was in effect, then we know that we stand and have a good case, because under an oral agreement, many of these things would not have been able to take place under the will and according to the pre-knowledge that everyone has from the departed Mr. Robinson. Go ahead with the testimony. It's clear that my client, the town of Coralville, is an incorporated town, incorporated under the general statutes of Iowa relating to the incorporating of cities, and we have been since 1873. That the defendant, the Coralville Ecclesiastic Church Union Society, that the defendants above names at the Coralville Union Church is a corporation, and they are organized under the corporation laws of Iowa, also located in Coralville, Iowa. In the year 1892, the above-named corporation by its members, my client, the town of Coralville, wishing to erect a building as a place of meeting, the corporation being unable to put this thing together, the church couldn't put this together, Your Honor, so my client, the town of Coralville, stepped forth with a lot of dignity and a lot of soul searching. They decided to help the church, and therefore my case today will be the town of Coralville talking about this church, so-called church property. The church wished to erect a building as a place of meeting, and the church was unable to erect that building, and they requested the aid of my client, the town of Coralville, without any references to a church affiliation, in erecting the building with oral understanding that such building, when so erected, would be a community center or a general and public meeting building and town hall affiliations, of course, and with this oral understanding and oral agreement by their combined efforts with the people of Coralville. My client, the town of Coralville, called upon the fine people of the town of Coralville to come forth and bring with them their ability to invest not so much money on their behalf, but invest the ingenuity, the sweat, the labor, the time, the efforts, the dedication on behalf of their beloved town, my client, the town of Coralville, to get this building erected so that they could use this property to their benefit on behalf of the city of Coralville. Your Honor, what a great story this is. Anything else from either side before we move on to the next point? Mr. Walker. Therefore, Your Honor, having secured the use of said basement through the understanding set above, we feel that we, the defendants, we are on good, solid ground on our case to deny any claims as brought to today by the plaintiffs, the town of Coralville. Now, we've made some contributions to this thing, and we understand that the Coralville, the interest created in such property is thereby nothing more than a license to use the basement of such church for such moral, public purposes. It did not interfere with the religious purposes, and you know, the express, everyone knows that Mr. Robinson said moral purposes did not include dancing. We understand and we agree that dancing is on the borderline there of the youth of this town. Dancing brings with it lots and lots of problems in society, and the Coralville Union Ecclesiastic Church, and through Mr. Robinson, wanted no part of that. That's true. Well, my clients are not going to go any deeper than this. You know, a lot of my clients, members of the church, are members also of the town council and are duly elected thereof. And Your Honor, I may speak to the court, Your Honor, the fine people of the Ecclesiastic Church don't want to ruffle feathers. All they want to do is pay homage to the oral agreement that we had, pay homage to the life and in the remembrance of Mr. Robinson, who donated his very own land so that the church may have a property. And yes, we know that the town of Coreville invested some town funds, and the good people of town of Coreville came forward. But Your Honor, the property belongs to the church. And Your Honor, based on everything we've heard in court today, we've heard Mr. Fairchild, the attorney for the plaintiff, talk about the good people of the town of Coralville and how this was to be a community building and how everyone could meet there and how they've had this and how they've had that. My, all the things that have gone on there, roughly sometimes without the knowledge of the people, the good people of the Union Church. We had no idea some of these things were going on over there. And much to our chagrin, now that the town of Coralville is sort of what we call pushing the envelope a little bit. They're trying to push the church into a corner on this thing. And Your Honor, let me state one more time for the court, as loud and as expressly to the point as we can, that the Coralville Ecclesiastic Church, the defendants here today, we deny each and every allegation as made by the town of Coralville through their attorney, Mr. Fairchild. Mr. Fairchild, this church is located on Lot 5 and 3, also known as 2nd Avenue in Coralville, Your Honor. So all my client and the people of Coralville came forward to erect that so they could use the lower room of said building was to be a general community hall for all municipal purposes, or a town hall and general public meeting places. And that was the understanding we had. In furtherance of said understanding, the lots above described were donated. We understand that. They were donated to the church by Charles E. Robinson. Now, good old Charlie, you know, we all know and remember Charlie. No longer with us. We're very sad for that. But we all remember him as a fine, upstanding Coreville businessman. He ran the oat factory here in town, as we all know, and the oat factory are located right across the street down there, just below the mill on the dam here. And what a fine attribute, and what a fine plus that is for the town of Coreville. Lots of jobs down there, and such a fine product, and such a fine God-fearing man of Mr. Robinson. He took it upon himself to donate this land to the church. And now, on behalf of the town of Coreville, we all step forward together in an excellent form, showing of public love for our little town of Coreville, Iowa. So, Mr. Robinson, our hat is off to you, and we're going to go forward with this, knowing what we think that you want it to happen over there. For 27 years, the town caucuses and the general town elections have been held therein, and public trials have been held in the said basement. Judge, I think I've seen you out there myself on a few occasions right there. And India Incorporated, the town, through its duly elected officers, time to time, have expended sums of money in repairing the building. My clients have gone out of the way to spend town money on the repairs and the upkeep of this building to help keep this property so that we may use it, so the town may use it. As you know, we have town council meetings there the 2nd and the 4th Tuesday of every month. We all know that. That the meetings have allegedly, and the gatherings of the general public in said basement and the repairs made on said building have been with the full knowledge of the trustees and members of the Coreville Union Church. They knew that the town of Coreville and the people of Coreville were helping them repair, build, rebuild, and perform maintenance on this building. And the possession of the said basement, I'm not sure that's relevant. Let me go ahead with your point. Go ahead. Now, Judge, Your Honor, we're talking about the basement here. We pray for quiet title on this property so that we can quiet down the adverse feelings that the members of the church have shown towards certain people of uses of the town of Coralville. That some of the trustees were also officers of the town of Coralville. For many years, Charles E. Robinson, one of the trustees of the church and charter member of the church, was also the treasurer of the fine town of Coreville. You see, Your Honor, this is a tough case. We all understand that. Some of the people in the church are on the council, and some of the people on the council are very, very apathetic and sympathetic and appreciative of all the things that the Coralville Ecclesiastic Church has done for the town of Coralville. Okay, all right, that summarizes it. Both of you happy with that, with what you've laid on the court here right now? Are you both happy? Mr. Walker? Mr. Fairchild? All right, very good. On this 29th day of September 1922 AD, being one of the days of the regular session of the term of the Johnson County Court, the above entitled cause of action coming on for final determination, adjudication, and decree, the same having been heretofore tried, argued, and submitted and taken under advisement by the court. The court now being fully advised in the premise finds that the defendant, Coreville Union Church, a corporation, is the absolute unqualified owner of the premises described in the plaintiff's position and their petition, together with the buildings and the appurtenance thereto, subject to the rights of Charles E. Robinson and his heirs and successors, in interest to the reversion thereof in said lots, should not be used for church purposes for 2 years or more, the right of the irrevocable license of the plaintiff, the incorporated town of Coralville, Iowa, to use the basement of the Coralville Union Church for municipal purposes. It is therefore and thereby ordered and adjudged and decreed that the defendant, the Coralville Union Church, a corporation, is the absolute unqualified owner of the following described premises. It is further ordered, adjudged, and decreed that judgment be entered against the plaintiff, the town, and the citizens of Coralville for the costs of this action. This court is adjourned. Well, the church won. Or had they? The town had lost. Or did they? Okay. Neighbor against neighbor. The town and its people versus the church and the same people, roughly, give or take. Okay? Was there a winner? I'm not sure. Quietly, on April 1st, 1930, the church gave a warranty deed to the town of Coreville for the church property, some 8 years later. During that time, everybody was in limbo. The grudges were held, animosity prevailed. It all ended well. In 1930, Coreville became the owner of the property. We all know the little story that has long been forgotten. The building after that went on to be the Coreville Town Hall for 40 years, until the new and present Town Hall, City Hall now, was built in 1971 and presently expanded. During the ensuing years from 1930 to 1971, the upper level was City Hall. All council meetings were held there on the second and fourth Tuesday, just like they are today, only in the upper level, which was supposed to be only for church. You see, the deed in 1930 wiped all that out, and it became the official town hall for the city of Coralville. The infamous basement was again used as Coralville's official polling site. The office of the Coralville Police Department, the office of the Coralville Planning Department was down there. The engineering office was in the lower level. It was the courtroom. It was the community room. And it was the official location starting in 1959 and for many years the site of the Coreville Optimus Pancake Day. Now the Coreville Optimus Pancake Day is still going today in 2012. It started in the basement of that room. Boy Scout meetings were held. Girl Scout meetings were held. The Coreville Public Library, as we so know it today, in its large, beautiful, recently upgraded building on 5th Street in Coreville, they started in the basement of old Coreville Town Hall. It was the location of the makeshift lockup jail for Coreville. You see, this little building and the basement in that little building played such a huge, huge part in the history of Coreville. That's why we visited it today. And that's why when you're out driving around Coreville, I want you to pull down on 2nd Avenue down there, right behind Golfzilla, and I want you to see the little building. As innocent as it looks, it's a photography studio today, as innocent as it looks, a lot of Coreville history was there. The Pancake Day was so popular that there would be a big line to get into the door on the south side, about midship on the building, that when 2 or 3 people would come out, they'd let 2 or 3 people in, and the line would be up the steps and out in the grass. It was new. Coreville was on the move. This building was a huge, huge part of Coreville history. This case is closed. On behalf of Coreville history and Rex Brandstatter, good day.